I've been working in a factory for about 8 years. Before that, I did all kinds of different jobs. I worked in warehouses, fast food, did a little bit of phone sales, did some office work. So I've been around a little bit. Out of all those types of jobs, working in a factory is definitely my favorite. There's a high demand for factory workers, and because of that, the pay for factory workers is pretty good. A lot of factory workers might work 50 hours a week. I'm gonna put some numbers up on the board here. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I'd guess, the average pay for a factory worker is 20 or 30 bucks an hour. And for what I've seen, a lot of factory workers, work 50 plus hours a week. So, presumably a lot of people in factories are making 60, 80, 100K. And believe it or not, there's people in factories without any sort of college education close or sometimes over 200K. I personally know people that make more than $200,000 a year. That being said, they work a lot of hours. So without further ado, I kind of want to touch on the cultural differences between working in a factory and working between an office job. When we work in a factory, we're all working towards the same goal. We want to keep the machines running, and we want to keep the machines running as often as possible so we can try to keep on schedule, because whatever we're making is making the company a whole buttload of money. I'm gonna write that on board. Whole buttload of money is coming in. I mean, we're talking tens or hundreds of $1,000s a day, and you might just have a few people working there. So remember that. Whole buttload of money is coming in. And so these positions need to be filled. And guess what? For whatever reason, not a lot of people are going into factory work. So these companies are paying a lot of money. I do industrial maintenance, specifically automation and electrical maintenance. And I've seen a pretty significant pay increase recently. And that's because there's not a lot of people going into it. And the factories need maintenance personnel to keep the machines running, or they're not making tens or hundreds or in some cases millions of dollars a day. And that is not good. I think the most glaring difference that you'll see when you start working at a factory is that, going to an office environment, everyone's dressed nicely. Everyone, for the most part, is trying to be pretty polite and professional. But at a factory, no one cares if you're polite and professional. No one cares what you look like. They just care that you're there and you're willing to work and get the job done. Again, the companies are typically a little bit desperate to keep people, so there's a lot of incentives that stem from that. In my opinion, working in a factory, you're going to find that your supervisors tend to respect you a little bit more than in other environments. At least that's been my experience. Now, the world's changed in the last 5 years quite a bit, so I don't have any experience working in an office environment or a call center in the last 5 years. But when I compare my experience in a factory now to my office experience a couple years ago, it's night and day, the difference in the level of respect and kindness that I get from my supervisors. Working in a factory, there's definitely a feeling like we're all on the same team. The supervisors, the maintenance personnel, and the operators are just all trying to get the machines running. If you're considering looking at factory work, I'm sure some people may be thrown off by the idea of getting dirty or doing physically exhausting work for long hours, which is a valid concern. Always remember that you got to remember that a lot of the workforce, especially in factories, are older. So, if you're working in manufacturing, generally speaking, I wouldn't expect backbreaking labor. However, you may work at a dirty facility, and that is something that you might have to deal with working in a factory environment. I could go on and on about industrial maintenance, fixing machines, troubleshooting circuits, doing calibrations, modifying and troubleshooting automation software. But that's not really the focus of this video. Personally, I really enjoy what I do at the factory. But I also enjoy the vibe or like the overall feel of the factory in general. And there's a couple reasons for that. I find that people in a factory are more down to earth, and there's definitely you definitely have the ability to be yourself in a factory, and you generally don't really have to worry about, you know, optics or professionalism. You're never dealing with customers, so you don't have to deal with, you know, nagging customers ever. Yeah, you're pretty much just free to be whoever you are and do the job. Yeah, so that's something I really enjoy about it. I find that industrial people tend to be a little bit more grungy, if that makes sense. It's a little bit more of a blue collar environment, so you're going to have more of a variety of backgrounds. Generally speaking, the workforce in a manufacturing environment is pretty diverse racially and age-wise. I found that higher paying places tend to have older people working there, and, you know, lower paying companies tend to have younger people. That's just my experience. But, you know, if you're in a high stress position and you just can't take it anymore, and that's why you're watching this video, I think that factories are a great option, especially if you're trying to avoid stress and politics. There is politics that goes on in a factory, but a lot of people just stay out of it. I try to stay out of it. Most people try to stay out of it. You know, most factories are owned by big corporations, so you will have supervisors and managers who are, you know, really playing the politics game to climb the corporate ladder. But it's a very small proportion of the people in the factory. Something else that I noticed about working in a factory, it's when you, in my opinion, when you start in a factory, there's a bit of a break-in period where people are trying to figure out what you're all about. It's just, again, this is all just my opinion and, you know, how I feel about working in factories. But at first, kind of expect to not really get to know people super great. Maybe they're just trying to figure you out and see if they can trust you or not. And then once people figure out that you're just there to do your job and you're not going to be in their business or gossiping or bad mouthing anyone, and you're just there to work and get through the day and get your paycheck like everyone else. Once you get through that period, it kind of feels like you're part of the team. You know, you clock in, a bunch of people there, including supervisors, and guess what? We all got the same goal. We're just trying to get through the day. Let's keep these machines running. Let's, you know, do our assignments, get along and joke and have fun while we're doing it, and that's how it is. Another benefit about working in factories is you get to see some really cool equipment. You know, I'm completely anonymous about where I work on my channel for obvious reasons. Also on my LinkedIn, if you ever see my LinkedIn profile, it's a previous employer on there, but I'll just say this. I've had the great pleasure of seeing some very cool stuff in Cleveland, Ohio. I've worked on some of the biggest machines there are in the whole city. This is a big city. You know, I've seen some really cool stuff. And if you do get into a factory, you're going to learn some very interesting, complicated, multi-million-dollar machines. So that in itself is just a little treat to, you know, really see some cool stuff that you may not have known about before. There's all types of different machines out there. Anything from, you know, robotic stackers to stack stuff on a pallet, robotic pallet wrappers, you know, food processing equipment, fillers. You got bottle fillers, you got test stands, you got diesel generators, big stacks, big filtration systems, high-powered motors, giant substations, super complicated control panels that operate different types of machinery that make all types of different widgets and whatnot. It's all really cool, and working in a factory, you get the pleasure to work on that stuff and just learn about it. I would say my least favorite part about working in a factory is typically factories don't just run on first shift, so a lot of people end up working off shifts. Especially if you're newer, there's a very good chance that you'll end up on an off shift. So you may end up working overnights or second shift, which isn't really the best, generally speaking. The overnight shifts, generally what I was saying about like professionalism, like there's more leeway in general on off shifts than on shifts, so that's one good thing. There's a little bit more leeway on the off shifts, and when you're working first shift, you are going to be around more supervisors and corporate people, so you do have to be on your P's and Q's a little bit more working first shift. So I have like successful family members and cousins and friends or whatever you know, a lot of us, we all have different careers. I got some people working in the restaurant industry that I know that are very successful. I have a lot of salespeople in my family. You know, my wife's supervisor at a hospital for nurses. All different types of careers out there. And I would say that one of the benefits of working in manufacturing is, generally speaking, the stress level, I think, is way lower, honestly, for what we do. When you're on the job and, you know, a machine breaks down or you're falling behind, there is some stress that comes up when you have problems at work. But the cool thing about this type of work is there's like no stress that, you know, when you go home, you don't think about the job at all. And you know, it's in a lot of ways, working at a factory has a lot of the benefits of working an entry-level job, but you can actually make a lot of money in a factory, so that's pretty awesome. Another cool thing about a factory is that, you know, you can start from the bottom and work your way up, whether you want to go into supervision and management, or if you want to go into industrial maintenance and then maintenance supervision, or you can start in, you know, entry-level positions, move up to operations, and eventually engineering. I mean, those are all options. A lot of factories hire from within. So, you know, you can start at a factory, you know, entry-level, no experience, making, you know, 15 to 20 bucks an hour, I think, is about the low end of a lot of factories. Some of them start around 25 or 30. It just depends where you're at. But you can start there, and before you know it, you could be raking in, you know, well into the six figures. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I don't know if I'm just rambling or not. Maybe I'm not expressing my feelings very well, but the bottom line is this. For me, I feel very blessed that I get to work in manufacturing, and I found a career that I really enjoy. It's a low-stress career, and I make a great living. And you know, when I'm driving to work, I don't get stressed out at all. I mean, I'm going to work, whatever. I go to work, then I go home. I'm happy either way, you know. And not a lot of people get to do that. I don't have to do anything morally wrong ever at my job. I don't have to fight with anyone ever at my job. I just chill and I work, and I try to fix the machines the best I can. And that's the bottom line. So, yeah, I don't know. If you're thinking about a career change, check out working in a factory, industrial, manufacturing, blue-collar stuff. I would suggest getting a LinkedIn profile, a resume, and if you don't have any relevant experience, just start reaching out to staffing agencies. That's where you want to start. Remember, they get paid when they get you in the door, so they're going to fight like heck to get you in the door. Get in touch with some staffing agencies and have at it. Find me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.